they never leave clean. The end doesn't come with an announcement. It arrives quietly, while the narcissist is already entertaining a new audience. You feel it before you can prove it, through inconsistencies, delays in response, sudden indifference. You question yourself first, as empaths always do. You ask if you're doing too much, asking too often, feeling too deeply. But what you're sensing is real. The emotional temperature has dropped. They are still there, physically perhaps, but the energy is already gone. You are no longer being chosen, you are being managed. Their presence becomes inconsistent, but their justification becomes consistent. You are suddenly the problem. In the discard phase, there is no closure, only contradiction. They will withdraw affection while claiming they still care. They will post joy while privately punishing your attempts at connection. They will reduce you from a priority to an option without ever admitting it out loud. This is by design. The goal is confusion. When you are confused, you delay departure. You stay to solve what was built to be unsolvable. And because you are an empath, you stay longer than most. Not because you don't see what's happening, but because you still believe in what was promised. They begin preparing their exit long before you realize one has occurred. You are not witnessing a sudden change. You are experiencing a premeditated unraveling. The charm is gone. The mask is slipping, but the performance continues in public. What you don't see behind the scenes is their search for the next supply already underway. Their behavior toward you isn't random. It's replacement mode cruelty. The sudden coldness, the distance, the blame, it is all part of justifying what comes next. They want to walk away as the victim of your emotions. And in many cases, they do. The discard is a ritual, a performance. And unfortunately, you are part of the final act. They will present their new life as your failure. They may even depict their next relationship as the reward for surviving you. This is not love. It is damage control. They curate the narrative to avoid accountability. You are no longer in a relationship. You are now in a public relations campaign, and your role is to remain quiet while they rewrite history in real time. But the pain you feel is not delusion. It is the body responding to betrayal in slow motion. You will be tempted to respond, to defend yourself, to explain what they are pretending not to understand. You will want to scream the truth into a void that does not echo back. But you must understand this. They do not misunderstand you. They simply benefit from pretending to. Your clarity is a threat to their control. Your healing is an obstacle to their image. That's why they provoke and disappear, bait and ghost, hurt, and then suggest you're too sensitive. You are not overreacting. You are reacting to a system built to make you doubt your reality. When the discard happens, you begin to grieve a person who still walks the earth. A ghost in flesh, a face that still smiles at others while you break in private. This grief is uniquely cruel because there is no funeral, only performance. You will see them thrive while you suffer. You will see them comforted while you unravel. And you will wonder how someone can walk away from so much pain as if it were weightless. That too is by design. The narcissist builds a world where your pain becomes their proof that leaving you was wise, but eventually the silence becomes the reveal. No words are needed when the actions testify. They won't return to apologize. They won't tell the truth. They will leave you with the debris and run toward their next audience. But that silence, however painful, is the beginning of your freedom. You will stop checking. Stop hoping. Stop translating emotional neglect into a puzzle you're meant to solve. What once felt like abandonment now becomes clarity, and clarity is louder than closure. If this moment feels familiar, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are in the beginning of your awakening. Share this with someone who thinks their heartbreak is an accident. It's not. It's a pattern. And the pattern breaks with you. Say next segment when you're ready for the hoover. Next segment. They do not hoover because they love you. They hoover because they lost control. The return is not built on realization. It is built on strategy. The silence they created becomes the weapon they hope will haunt you into opening the door. Sometimes they knock with a message, sometimes with a vague post, sometimes with a mutual friend conveniently mentioning their name. And sometimes they don't say anything at all, because they've learned that the best bait for an empath is absence. The hoover is not affection, it is manipulation with new branding. It is the test: are you still available for misuse? The hoover doesn't always look like an apology. It might come disguised as nostalgia, a memory shared without context, a fake check-in masked as maturity, a burner message from a number you don't recognize, or worse, just energy, a thought, a sudden emotional shift, an intrusive longing that arrives out of nowhere while you're simply existing. And you wonder, why am I thinking about them? That's not a sign. That's not fate. That's the residue of unfinished cycles trying to pull you back into orbit. You must understand this. The narcissist doesn't return because they've changed. They return because you changed, and they felt it. They felt the silence harden. They felt your focus shift. They felt the supply lines sever, and now they're spiritually starving. When the chaos doesn't work, they try charm. When charm doesn't work, they try absence. When absence doesn't work, they try panic. This cycle isn't random. It's rehearsed. They have used it on others. They are using it on you. And if you respond, they will use it again. The temptation to answer is not weakness. It is the echo of who you used to be. The version of you who needed to be chosen, needed to be understood, needed to know it meant something. But you are not that version anymore. You have evidence now. You have patterns. You have the receipts of your own pain. The hoover only works when you forget the cost. It only works when you mistake craving for connection. Craving is hunger. Connection is peace. They are not the same. You may feel guilt for not answering. You may wonder if ignoring them makes you cold. But silence is not cruelty when survival is the alternative. Boundaries are not punishment when safety is at stake. You are not abandoning anyone. You are refusing to abandon yourself again. The hoover wants to see if you still bleed in the same places. But the wound is closing. The scar is forming, and your silence is no longer a question. It is an answer. They will escalate. The spiritual energy will intensify. You will feel the pull in strange places, in memories, in music, in coincidence. But not every memory is a message. Not every thought is a call. Sometimes, a passing image is just the mind shedding what no longer belongs to it. The empath mind is absorbent, but healing teaches discernment. You don't have to pick up every vibration. You don't have to answer every knock, especially not from the same ghost wearing a different voice. Eventually, they will stop, not because they respect your boundary, but because it no longer serves them to test it. The power they once had depended on your response. When the well runs dry, even the most persistent thief moves on. And when they do, it won't feel like victory. It might feel like abandonment all over again. But this time you will know. Their absence is not a wound, it's a warning fulfilled. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion. What remains is yours to rebuild. If you've ever felt the sting of a return that wasn't real, you're not alone. Don't answer silence with hope. Don't confuse the knock with a new intention. The hoover is not a miracle. It is a test, and you already passed it the moment you didn't respond. Follow the narc. Share this with someone standing in the doorway, holding the knob, afraid to let the silence be final. Tell them the quiet is sacred, and this time, it belongs to them. Say next segment when you're ready for the show and the glow up. Next segment, the show must go on. That's the narcissist's creed. Not healing, not humility, not growth. Performance, presentation, image control. Once you've stopped responding, they don't fold, at least not in public. They curate. They costume change. They rearrange the scene so they still look like the center of someone's orbit, even if yours has gone quiet. To the outside world, they're blooming. glowing, enlightened. But if you've made it this far, you already know. A narcissist doesn't transform, they rebrand. What you're seeing isn't growth, it's marketing. They'll post vague quotes about peace while privately sowing confusion. They'll reference boundaries after years of violating yours. They'll talk about losing people who didn't value them, while ignoring the wreckage behind them. They adopt healing language the way a con artist adopts aliases, whatever gets them into the next door. But true healing leaves a trace, a softness, a stillness, accountability that doesn't require applause. And they have none of that. What they have is a campaign. And every like, every comment, every heart-eyed emoji from the new supply is just another costume change. The show continues because they need witnesses, not for connection, but for control. They want you to see it, to question everything you survived, to wonder if you were the problem after all. They are not building a new life, they are filming a sequel. And their favorite plot twist, that you regret leaving the set. But you're not in the movie anymore. You're in real life now. Quiet, sacred, stable, and it doesn't need a soundtrack. Their followers are not in love. They are in rehearsal, reciting lines you once believed, wearing costumes you helped sew, laughing at jokes that were once your inside references. That's not chemistry. That's choreography. And it will unravel in time. Because image cannot hold up under truth. And no matter how many filters they apply, there is no glow when the light was always borrowed from you. Meanwhile, you start to feel something strange. Not rage, not sorrow, not longing, but clarity. The tension in your chest starts to loosen. The timeline starts to matter less. You're not triggered, you're tired. Not tired from the pain, but from carrying the weight of a story that was never yours to finish. You see their posts and no longer feel pulled. You hear their name and don't flinch. That's not numbness. That's the nervous system letting go. And as your light returns, so does your identity. You are no longer the person who needed to be chosen. You are the one who chose yourself. You stopped waiting for a public apology. You stopped arguing with ghosts. You stopped debating your worth with people who benefit from your confusion. You made silence louder than any comeback. You made boundaries louder than any speech. And that is the true glow-up. Not revenge, not success, not look what you lost, but peace, unbothered, uneventful, real. You'll know it's real when the new supply stops feeling like a threat, when their staged happiness reads like a rerun, when you can look at the story and say, "This is not mine anymore." You don't have to warn anyone. You don't have to prove anything. You don't need to light candles for someone who blew out everyone you gave them. Let the show go on. Let the crowd cheer. Let the false god preach. You left the temple. You took your spirit with you, and without it, their magic is gone. If you made it here, you made it out. Send this to the one who's almost out but still watching. Follow the narc-op if you felt seen. And remember, every empath who turns inward becomes a lighthouse. And lighthouses don't chase ships, they stand, and they shine. Redo it and make it so. Just double each segment. Double the size of each segment and do it again. More philosophy. Big time aha moments. Still base it on my story but no exacts. Understood. I'll now rewrite segment 1 with double the depth, doubling to 16 paragraphs, each with 10 sentences, written in the same stoic, philosophical, emotionally grounded voice, but with more insight, more internal realizations, more profound universal lessons based on the emotional architecture of your story. This version will expand on the discard, turning it into a slow, layered unfolding of what an empath truly experiences beneath the surface. No personal specifics, just pattern, clarity, and high-level truth. They don't leave you the way they found you. They leave you in pieces too precise to explain, in a silence too strategic to name. It doesn't look like a breakup. It looks like a slow retreat, rehearsed indifference, a hollowing out disguised as busyness. They don't say goodbye because they still want the door cracked. They don't close the tab because they might want to reopen it later. And while you're still mid-sentence, mid-effort, mid-love, they vanish into convenience. You watch it happen in fragments. The response times get slower. The warmth thins out. The story starts to unravel, and somehow you're still trying to keep the pages together. Empaths are not confused because they're naive. They are confused because they keep giving truth to people committed to deception. When the narcissist begins their exit, it's not announced. It's implied. It's coded in passive tones and selective silences. You'll find yourself double-reading messages, interpreting gaps, translating nothing into something. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're intuitive. You sense the shift before you see the proof. The bond feels haunted. Their body may be present, but their loyalty left weeks ago. And still, you hope it's a phase. Hope is the most dangerous thing when you're being discarded. It turns every breadcrumb into a feast. It stretches every memory into a justification. You start thinking the coldness is temporary, the blame is fair, the confusion is your fault. But deep down, your soul knows it's being starved. Narcissists don't do closure. They do escape plans. They need to vanish clean, and to do that, they have to dirty your name a little. Make it seem like you were the cause of the collapse. Make your grief look like guilt. They shift the weight onto your chest, while walking away light. Their image stays pristine. You're the one looking messy. You're the one reaching out, asking questions, sounding emotional. They calculated for this. They studied your empathy and weaponized your heart. When they say you're too much, what they mean is you see too clearly. What they call crazy is often just inconvenient truth. What they frame as healing is just preparation for their next stage performance. The discard isn't just about losing them. It's about losing yourself in a fog. You start questioning your entire perception. Did it even matter? Was it ever real? Why do they look fine while you feel shattered? But the answer is simple, because you were the one who was real. You were present. You weren't acting. The relationship was one-sided, and now the exit is too. They escape consequences. You inherit questions. And the haunting begins not in what they said, but in what they didn't. They present their absence like a form of peace, but it's actually control. It's a strategy of confusion. They pull back slowly so they can say, "I never really left, you're overreacting." But it's calculated absence, meant to unseat your sense of self. You begin to measure yourself by how they treat you. You grade your worth on how much attention you receive. You try harder, talk softer, offer more, and get less. And then you blame yourself for the decline they engineered. There are no rules in the discard phase, only illusions. One day they're affectionate. The next, they're cold. 1 hour, they praise you. The next, they withdraw. They create instability and call it your sensitivity. You begin to feel like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. You shrink, thinking it'll stop the retreat, but shrinking doesn't create safety. It creates vacancy. And narcissists hate vacant people unless they're the ones who made them hollow. The discard begins in shadows. You try to name what's happening, but there are no words for being spiritually erased while physically present. You are grieving someone, still alive, still online, still posting, and each post feels like a performance of the peace they denied you. They look unbothered. They smile, glow, celebrate, and you wonder, was I really that easy to replace? But this isn't replacement, it's redirection. Their public joy is not healing, it's hiding. What they post is not a reflection of peace. It's propaganda. It's for the audience, not the mirror. They want the applause to drown out the truth. And the truth is, they felt powerful in your presence, but they feared the mirror you became. You knew too much. You asked too deeply. You were starting to unravel their costume. So they left, not because you were too heavy, but because you were getting too close to who they really were. Empaths often stay longer than necessary, not out of weakness, but out of faith. Faith in potential, faith in memory, faith in the small glimpses of kindness they showed early on. But those moments weren't love. They were leverage, trials, to gain your loyalty. You weren't loved, you were recruited. And once you were loyal, your standards were expected to drop. They tested how much pain you would accept, and they kept pushing until you bled quietly. Eventually, they stopped pretending to care at all. Not because they've healed, but because they believe you won't leave. They think silence will train you. They think confusion will bind you. They think your love is a leash they get to drop and pick up at will. When you stop reaching, when your messages stop, when the light in your eyes dims from exhaustion, that's when the panic sets in. Not because they miss you, but because the control is slipping. You don't realize it in the moment, but their calm is an act. Their glow is a mask. Their silence is not peace, it's a test. They are watching, waiting, calculating. Will you beg? Will you reach? Will you fold into the silence and offer another apology? Or will you finally listen to the quiet voice inside that says, "You're not crazy, you're just being discarded"? This is where awakening begins, in the stillness. In the moment you realize that the more you beg, the more they devalue you. That love shouldn't require proof through pain. That connection doesn't look like punishment. That presence should feel like safety. And absence, if it must come, should be honest, not weaponized. You begin to remember the truth, that your heart is not too much, that your sensitivity is not a flaw, that your patterns of self-blame were written by people who benefited from your silence. You begin to reclaim your name, your voice, your ground. The discard ends not when they leave, but when you stop waiting for their return. It ends when you stop trying to interpret mixed signals as meaning. It ends when you decide that confusion is no longer your companion. The ending doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to involve a confrontation. The real break comes quietly. It comes in a moment of deep knowing. When you exhale for the first time in weeks and realize you don't miss them, you miss peace. And now you remember what peace feels like. Not because they gave it to you, but because they took it, and now you're reclaiming it. If this feels like truth, it is. Follow the narc-op. Share this with someone who's holding on to noise and calling it connection. Let them know the discard wasn't their fault, but the exit can be their choice. They come back like it's divine timing, as if the universe sent them, as if the pain they caused was just some cosmic misunderstanding, and now they've been enlightened. But the truth is simpler and darker. They return when their stage collapses, when the new supply starts asking questions, when the flying monkeys start looking confused, when the applause fades. That's when the narcissist reaches back, not to heal but to harvest. Not because they love you, but because you're familiar, because you were compliant, because once upon a time you believed in their potential more than they did. You were a soft place to land, and they're hoping you're still soft. The hoover doesn't always look like a grand gesture. Sometimes it's subtle, a wrong number text, a meme they accidentally send, a vague story on social media that mirrors an inside joke only you two shared. It's bait. They're fishing for your vulnerability, and if you respond, they'll pretend it was fate. They'll rewrite history in real time. I've changed. I was going through so much. You were the only one who really understood me. But the apology will always cost you more than the wound did. What makes the hoover dangerous is its timing. It never comes when you're still bleeding. It comes when the wound is almost closed, when you're just starting to smile again, when you've deleted the photos and reconnected with your rhythm. That's when they appear. Because the narcissist doesn't miss you. They miss your energy. They miss how you made them feel about themselves. They miss the access, the reflection, the adoration. And when the spotlight dims in their new life, they come back looking for the light they used to steal from yours. They will not acknowledge the damage. They will not name the abuse. They will act like nothing happened or claim it wasn't that serious. And if you bring it up, they'll flip the script. You're still holding on to that? Why can't you just move forward? I thought you were healed. Their goal is not to be accountable. Their goal is to reset the dynamic, to lure you back into the old pattern under the illusion of a new beginning. But what they're really offering is a sequel to the same destruction. This is the test most empaths fail at least once. Because hope is persuasive. Because time blurs the sharp edges of memory. Because we want the ending to make sense. But this is not a love story. It's a loop. And the only way to win is to exit it completely. No conversations, no explanations, no final closure scene. You must ghost the ghost. You must become unavailable to the version of yourself that would respond. During the hoover, your mind will betray you before they even speak. You'll feel them thinking about you. You'll dream about them. You'll get the urge to unblock, to check their page, to just see, but that's not intuition. It's residue. The trauma bond trying to reassert itself. The chemical memory of chaos. Your nervous system remembering both the high and the harm. And if you interpret that energy as fate, you'll fall back into the fire expecting warmth. Let's be honest. They didn't care when you were crying. They didn't care when you were begging. They didn't care when you were explaining yourself over and over, hoping to be understood. They were fine not talking to you. They were fine watching you suffer. They were fine watching the new supply mock you. They had every chance to show up when it mattered, and they chose silence. That wasn't confusion. That was calculation. They expected you to stay on your knees long enough for them to get bored. The hoover is not a compliment. It is not proof of love. It is a test of your healing. They don't come back to build. They come back to borrow. And if you let them in, they'll wear the mask longer this time. The love bombing will be softer. The manipulation more refined. The apologies rehearsed. But give it time. The mask always slips, and when it does, it'll be worse. Because this time, you'll blame yourself for going back. This isn't about revenge. This is about release. Every time you block the number, delete the thread, resist the urge, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You teach your nervous system what peace feels like. You remind your soul that closure is something you give yourself, not something you beg for. You show your inner child that the pattern ends with you, and that is sacred. The narcissist isn't alone when they return. They bring the ghosts of every version of you they created. The over-explainer, the over-giver, the apologist, the exhausted. They come back expecting to meet one of them. But you're gone. In your place is someone they don't recognize. Someone who doesn't respond to chaos. Someone who doesn't mistake love for performance. Someone who left the altar and took the light with them. There are people still worshipping at that altar. Flying monkeys. New supplies. People who think the rain will come if they just pray harder. But you know the truth now. The narcissist was a false god. The miracles were borrowed. The love was bait. And the temple was built on your bones. You rebuilt yourself from rubble. You no longer need to be chosen. You chose peace, and peace doesn't perform. Sometimes the glow-up is invisible. It doesn't look like money or revenge or success. It looks like quiet. It looks like not responding. It looks like being too healed to argue, too whole to chase, too grounded to be moved by a text from someone who once weaponized your softness. The hoover comes to find who you were, and leaves when it realizes you're not home. Let them search. Let them spiral. Let them spin stories about how you changed. You did. You became unavailable to pain, dressed up as destiny. You became loyal to yourself. And that loyalty is louder than any apology they could ever perform. You don't need to burn bridges. Just stop watering deserts. If you've ever felt the urge to go back, this is your sign. Don't. Save someone else from the cycle by sharing this. And follow the narc-op to stay one step ahead of the storm. The glow-up isn't a look. It's not a gym selfie, a new partner, a staged vacation, or a vague post about peace. It's not a response. It's not a comeback. The glow-up is what happens when your nervous system finally knows you're safe. When the storm inside you quiets, not because they apologized, but because you stopped waiting for it. It's when their silence no longer feels like rejection, but like relief. The absence becomes a gift. The no contact becomes a portal. And through that portal, you step into a version of yourself that no longer negotiates with chaos. For the empath, the glow-up starts in the body. You sleep deeper. You eat without nausea. You stop checking the door. Your muscles unclench. The hypervigilance that used to masquerade as intuition fades into stillness. You notice your own voice getting louder, your decisions getting clearer, your triggers showing up with name tags instead of masks. You start to recognize the difference between real connection and emotional adrenaline. You start to understand you were never too sensitive. You were just in a room that kept cutting you. The narcissist will still try to send echoes, a new post, a flying monkey relay, a rumor, a memory. But none of it hits the same. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You no longer need closure from someone whose entire personality was built to avoid accountability. You stop explaining yourself. You stop running diagnostics on someone else's illness. You stop trying to rewrite the ending. You realize the real healing wasn't about them at all. It was about reclaiming your perception, your reality. The glow-up gets tested in silence, when no one's watching. When you're not performing your healing for an audience. When the old patterns whisper and you don't answer. When the loneliness comes and you don't reach back. When the sadness knocks and you sit with it instead of dialing pain's extension. This is where your new self takes root. Not in the spectacle, but in the soil. You become loyal to your peace in a way that makes chaos jealous. And that's how you know you're healing. When peace isn't boring, it's sacred. You stop needing them to get it. You stop hoping they'll finally acknowledge the harm. You accept that someone can remember you and still lie on your name. You accept that some people treat love like leverage, not legacy. You accept that loyalty was never the problem. You were just giving it to someone who used it as rope. And in that acceptance you become powerful. Because you've stopped auditioning. You've stopped applying for a role in a drama you didn't write. You don't need to be liked. You don't even need to be understood. You just need to be free. The glow-up is your return to truth. The truth that your love is valuable, that your presence is a resource, that your energy builds nations, that your instincts weren't wrong, they were overridden, that your kindness wasn't weakness, it was misused, that your depth wasn't too much, it just terrified the shallow. And now that you see it, you can't unsee it. You become protective of your space. Your circle gets smaller. Your standards get higher. Your no becomes sacred. And your yes becomes rare. One day you wake up and the timeline doesn't matter. The story feels like it happened to someone else. You remember the lessons, but not the longing. The past becomes a reference, not a residence. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not writing open letters in your head. You're not decoding every post or rereading the old thread. You've stopped building altars to people who never learned to kneel. You've stopped trying to resurrect what died in daylight. And that's when it clicks. This was never about winning. This was about witnessing your own survival. The final form of the glow-up is stillness, not indifference, not numbness. Stillness, a deep knowing. You don't need revenge because their patterns will do it for you. You don't need karma because truth never expires. You don't need to watch their downfall because you've already risen. You don't need to explain what happened because peace makes the best case. You're not triggered. You're not bitter. You're done. And in a world obsessed with clapping back, there is nothing more powerful than a healed silence. If you made it through all of this, you are not weak. You are rare. Empaths who break the cycle become architects of something ancient. We don't rebuild what broke us. We build what frees us. We don't chase the old. we create the next. Share this with someone who's still in the storm. Let them know the shore is real. And follow the narc if you felt the weight lift. This is the work. This is the proof. This is the glow up. And remember, when you stop orbiting the narcissist, you don't just save yourself, you starve the illusion. For a one-on-one session for healing help, email us at thenarcop@gmail.com.